Now, President Joe Biden addresses the nation after dropping out of the race, allowing the VP to take over the campaign. What's next, and what will Biden say? Coverage on Brooklyn News starts right now.
Good day, I'm Jackson Mitchell. You are watching live coverage as in just moments, President Biden is expected to address the nation from the Oval Office following a historic news cycle and historic breaking news, really, that we have seen these last few weeks, from the attempted assassination now to Biden dropping out of the race. Now, the big question here, what is Biden likely to say in his Oval Office address? That question, a very big one tonight. But what we likely kind of expect to kind of happen here is him to kind of talk about, okay, say he's dropped out, and maybe be a little vague on the terminology he uses when it comes to talking about himself dropping out and maybe why he did it. But what we really expect him to talk about is the next 4 years. Not the next 4 years. The next little while Joe Biden still has his time in the Oval Office and in the White House. We expect him to kind of talk a little bit about that and what he wants to do while he still has the rest of his term. So that's a big thing here tonight of what we expect him to do. Now, I wanted to note something as we were kind of talking here, is that as we wait here, because this is expected to happen at 7, so it's 6:46 right now Central Standard Time, so we have a little less than 15 minutes, 14 minutes to be exact. The last time a president dropped out of the campaign or the race for another 4 years in the White House was Lyndon B. Johnson, and that was because he was really disliked after his handling of the Vietnam War, and he really didn't have a likely chance of winning, is what it appeared to be, at least in that time. He left office in 1969, but there's never been a president to leave the race for the White House for another 4 years so close to the election. We are only, I believe it's 105 days away from the election. I'll check really quickly. Stand by here. I'm going to check how many days until November 5th. That is 104. So I was close. 104 days away until we see the general election. And this is truly going to be an historic election, I assume. In just covering this, there's truly been so much. And we are now in just such a fast-moving news cycle. It appears every day there's something new. We cover something for a day or two, and then we have to move on to the next story. Just like today, Bibi Netanyahu, the the president of Israel, speaking earlier today and addressing Congress. Very mixed views on exactly what he said there, but that was something that occurred today. Now, we also have seen, I'm just talking about the news cycle that we have seen. We have also seen the Secret Service Director, Kimberly Cheadle, resigning after intense, and really brutal backlash and calls really for her to resign after her handling of the attempted assassination of Donald Trump at that rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. So a lot to watch out for in President Biden expected to speak here. So another question is, what is next? So I believe it was Sunday that he dropped out. It is now Wednesday, I do believe. So it's Wednesday, and it was Sunday that he dropped out. He said he was going to speak, and then he said he was going to speak and address the nation, and now we're seeing that. So I'm just trying to go back here and kind of see what's next here. So next would be, okay, so let me just backtrack here and give you a little bit of a timeline of what has occurred. Sunday, Biden drops out of the race. He says about 30 minutes after releasing that statement, he says, okay, I'm going to go ahead and endorse Kamala Harris. Things begin to change to the Harris campaign. farther than the Harris campaign. Right now, she has held many campaign events. I believe it's two now campaign events, maybe one official campaign event, and then there was another event that was held with staff. That it was a staff meeting that did have the press involved. That President Biden did call into. So again, right now, I'll show you a live view at the White House. So really quickly, as we're kind of going back here and talking about all of this. So President Biden calling into that staff meeting that occurred before her Michigan campaign rally. That was her first kind of official campaign rally as a kind of a presidential uh, candidate that's made it this far in the race. Because if you remember, Kamala Harris did in fact run for president, but dropped out early into the race because simply she just wasn't gaining enough traction. But this is her first kind of campaign that's made it so far, and that she's now even expected to be the Democratic nominee. So now Biden said he's going to adjust the nation. That's what's happening here in just a few moments. About 9 minutes here, we're expected to see him address the nation. Um, and then after that, the big thing that we're all going to be watching for is the Democratic National Convention. Just like the RNC that I covered where Trump spoke and all of that, we are going to be watching for the the Democratic National Convention. President Biden, we expect, will speak there. Of course, Kamala Harris will, because she's the likely nominee. The Associated Press reporting that she has, according to a survey they did, she has gained enough delegates to win the nomination. So she's going pretty far in this race. Now, I will say the reaction among Democrats is after all of those congressional Democrats were coming out and saying Biden needs to leave the race or pass the torch to some of them, even characterized their what needed to happen, really. So, what needed to happen, really, the Democratic response has kind of been,
After a canceled order.
has kind of been, I'm proud he left the race, and I feel kind of a sigh of relief. And some are endorsing Kamala Harris. We know Nancy Pelosi did. That's a big figure in all of this. Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker Emerita, she actually stepped down. Now, she's older than President Biden, and she stepped down. And I think that's something you could to note in this. So we are now 8 minutes away, and let me see if I can. If we have a feed or almost a feed, I'll go over here. Okay. Okay, here's what we're getting from the White House. We're waiting on that. We will begin shortly as President Biden is expected to address the nation here shortly. That's the feed we're getting from the Oval Office. And the reason Oval Office addresses are usually and supposed to be pretty important. Those are the Oval Office addresses that you address the nation. You're trying to get something out there. And often they're done in times like this, when you're still dropping out of the race. And I want to, if you ever heard the term lame duck, that is kind of when a candidate is resigning. This is their last term, and then they're done with kind of politics. That's what's happening with President Biden. But Karine Jean-Pierre, the press secretary for the White House, says, no, that is, they're not calling him a lame duck. And it's kind of a term that I say would be a little more derogatory, or has at least been turned into that way. So we're watching all of that. Again, the last time this happened, when a candidate drops out mid-campaign, is Lyndon B. Johnson during the Vietnam War. He was getting a lot of hate for his handling of the Vietnam War, and things people didn't really like how it was going things didn't look good, to say the least. I sound like I really can't talk today. So again, let's recap here, because we've kind of been talking throughout all of this. Here in about 5 minutes, President Biden is expected to address the nation. He's expected to talk about what he wants to do going forward, as he is resigning at the end of his term. And of course, president is the highest office of the United States. We don't expect him to do any more in politics unless he comes out to endorse somebody. But this comes after he was in isolation in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, because he tested positive with COVID-19 and was taking the medication Paxlovid. So That's what's happening right now. President Biden again expected to address the nation. We expect him to talk about him dropping out mid-campaign, possibly maybe even mentioning Kamala Harris and saying, I do trust her going forward, and then talk about what he wants to do as his term does come to an end here in the next few months or so. Again, this is the feed we're getting from the White House. I'll show you that. Excuse me here. So we're waiting on that to come from the White House. Let's go ahead and see if we can do standby here. Let's do this, and we'll wait for that feed so you can see it. As soon as that comes on, we will go directly over to it. So here in about 5 minutes, again, President Biden expected to address the nation. And this has really, and I'll just give my analyst on, it's really been an historic time in American politics. We have an attempted assassination. Then we have President Biden dropping out mid-campaign. And you have to think the calls for President Biden to drop out of the race, to have another 4 years in that Oval Office, go all the way back only 4 weeks ago when we saw that poor debate performance from President Biden, or at least so many people are calling it that, and that's kind of what it's been kind of labeled as all around. So the calls go back all the way 4 weeks ago. No, it's just saying that the calls 4 weeks ago, and now we're coming forward, and it's mind-blowing trying to keep up and cover all of it. It's so very much to cover all of this. I feel like half of these pages in this notebook are just full with my notes from speeches, from different things of that stuff, and different notes, even from, I believe I have notes in here from the debate somewhere, and I take notes on literally every event, it feels like. And this notebook's starting to get full this election season, because I think we're getting full speed ahead, really. So we're watching this all. Again, President Biden expected to address the nation here in just a few moments. We see that feed there beside me. Let's talk about something else. Let's talk about the Secret Service director resigning. She resigned, Kimberly Cheeto resigning in her letter, kind of saying, she's proud to have done what she did, but she is resigning. That comes after backlash following the attempted assassination of Donald Trump. So that has also been news. What's also been news is the Kamala Harris campaign. It's full-fledged now. And how that will work. The legal troubles, the possible legal troubles, have also been a big thing. You have to remember, 14 million votes went to President Biden in the primaries. And what the Democrats are going to argue, and what the Biden campaign is going to argue, what the Harris campaign is going to argue, is, well, when they voted for Biden, they also voted for me, Kamala Harris. That's what their argument's going to be. While the Republicans are going to say, no, they voted for Biden. How that's all going to play out, that's been really, I think, interesting to me, and I've been I may cover it one of these days once things get going and start going full pledge. It's 6:58. We are now 2 minutes away from President Biden expected to address the nation. You're watching there. A feed to my right, I believe it would be for y'all. So again, moments away, President Biden addressing the nation. I'm going to replay our intro, and then we will recap really quickly. And by that time, we should get a feed inside the White House.
Now, President Joe Biden addresses the nation after dropping out of the race, allowing the VP to take over the campaign. What's next, and what will Biden say? Coverage on Brooklyn News starts right now.
And it's time, everyone. Moments away, President Biden expected to address the nation from the Oval Office. An important address, as it has truly been a historic little while, and a historic overall when it comes to what we have seen these past few weeks from the attempted assassination. Only 2 weeks ago, I want to say close to 2 weeks ago in Butler, Pennsylvania, the failed attempted assassination of Donald Trump, to the calls for Biden to exit the race becoming very loud and clear. Biden appearing to have listened to those and dropping out of the race, staying in office until the end of his term. Now, Kamala Harris is taking over the campaign. Now, legal trouble questions and really just legal questions overall are arising as to how that's going to work. How is she just going to be able to get on the ballot? We'll be watching that all play out, of course, in just, it's 6:59 p.m., so any moment now we should get a feed inside the White House. as President Biden is expected to begin his Oval Office address. When we come back from that, as soon as he finishes that Oval Office address, we'll come back. We'll deep dive into what my notes are saying and what my analysis is on this whole entire speech. And we will have so much more coverage. So you can expect that. Again, right now, President Biden expected to address the nation any moment now. We are awaiting. That should come on any moment now. It's 7 p.m. now, so we're just watching that feed very, very closely. And as soon as it changes to see his President Biden sitting in the Oval Office, we will go over there again. This comes at a very historic moment in really election history. Still, again, awaiting here President Biden to begin speaking. We'll stand by for that. It's really been an historic little while for in election history, from an attempted assassination to the president dropping out of the campaign to win 4 more years in the Oval Office and endorsing his VP. It really has been a true little while here. We're still standing by here to see if he's going to speak soon. Stand by here. I'm gonna do something really quickly to make sure we're not missing out anything like that, or our feed's not having too much trouble. Stand by with me here 1 second. Yeah, we are all still awaiting President Biden to address here. As soon as his feed comes on, we'll go to it. Recapping here what has all occurred in these past few weeks. We'll just start back with the debate. The debate occurred on June 27th. Following Biden's poor performance in that debate, we have seen an enormous call from congressional Democrats and Democrats saying Biden needs to exit and that they don't think he can be president for another 4 years. Nancy Pelosi, Obama, big names in the Democratic Party, privately calling on Biden to drop out of the race. Then we had the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump that happened in Butler, Pennsylvania. And it wasn't just the attempted assassination. President Biden is now addressing the Oval Office. We will go over.
I'm speaking to you tonight from behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office. In this sacred space, I'm surrounded by portraits of extraordinary American presidents. Thomas Jefferson wrote the immortal words that guide this nation. George Washington, who showed us presidents are not kings. Abraham Lincoln, who implored us to reject malice. Franklin Roosevelt, who inspired us to reject fear. I revere this office, but I love my country more. It's been the honor of my life to serve as your president. But in the defense of democracy, which is at stake, I think is more important than any title. I draw strength and I find joy in working for the American people. But this sacred task of perfecting our union is not about me. It's about you, your families, your futures. It's about we, the people. We can never forget that. And I never have. I've made it clear that I believe America is at an inflection point. One of those rare moments in history when the decisions we make now will determine our fate of our nation and the world for decades to come. America's going to have to choose between moving forward or backward, between hope and hate, between unity and division. We have to decide, do we still believe in honesty, decency, respect, freedom, justice, and democracy? In this moment, we can see those we disagree with not as enemies, but as fellow Americans. Can we do that? Does character in public life still matter? I believe I know the answer to these questions because I know you, the American people. And I know this, we are a great nation because we are good people. When you elected me to this office, I promised to always level with you, to tell you the truth. And the truth, the sacred cause of this country is larger than any one of us. And those of us who cherish that cause, cherish it so much, a cause of American democracy itself, must unite to protect it. You know, in recent weeks, it's become clear to me that I need to unite my party in this critical endeavor. I believe my record as president, my leadership in the world, my vision for America's future, all merited a second term. But nothing can come in the way of saving our democracy. That includes personal ambition. So I've decided the best way forward is to pass the torch to a new generation. That's the best way to unite our nation. You know, there is a time and a place for long years of experience in public life. There's also a time and a place for new voices, fresh voices, yes, younger voices. And that time and place is now. Over the next 6 months, I'll be focused on doing my job as president. That means I'll continue to lower costs for hardworking families, grow our economy. I'll keep defending our personal freedoms and our civil rights, from the right to vote to the right to choose. I'll keep calling out hate and extremism. Make it clear there is no place in America for political violence or any violence ever, period. I'm going to keep speaking out to protect our kids from gun violence, our planet from climate crisis that is the existential threat. And I will keep fighting for my cancer moonshot so we can end cancer as we know it, because we can do it. I'm going to call for Supreme Court reform because this is critical to our democracy, Supreme Court reform. You know, I will keep working to ensure America remains strong, secure, and the leader of the free world. I'm the first president in this century to report to the American people that the United States is not at war anywhere in the world. We'll keep rallying a coalition of proud nations to stop Putin from taking over Ukraine and doing more damage. We'll keep NATO stronger, and I'll make it more powerful and more united than any time in all of our history. I'll keep doing the same for our allies in the Pacific. You know, when I came to office, the conventional wisdom was that China would inevitably surpass the United States. That's not the case anymore. And I'm going to keep working to end the war in Gaza, bring home all the hostages, and bring peace and security to the Middle East and end this war. We're also working around the clock to bring home Americans being unjustly detained all around the world. You know, we've come so far since my inauguration. On that day, I told you, as I stood in that winter, we stood in a winter of peril and a winter of possibilities. Peril and possibilities. We were in the grip of the worst pandemic in the century, the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, the worst attack on our democracy since the Civil War. We came together as Americans. We got through it. We emerged stronger, more prosperous, and more secure. Today, we have the strongest economy in the world, creating nearly 16 million new jobs, a record. Wages are up. Inflation continues to come down. The racial wealth gap is the lowest it's been in 20 years. We're literally rebuilding our entire nation, urban, suburban, rural, and tribal communities. Manufacturing has come back to America. We're leading the world again in chips and science and innovation. We finally beat Big Pharma after all these years to lower the cost of prescription drugs for seniors. And I'm going to keep fighting to make sure we lower the cost for everyone, not just seniors. More people have health care today in America than ever before. And I signed one of the most significant laws helping millions of veterans and their families who are exposed to toxic materials. You know, most significant climate law ever in the history of the world. The first major gun safety law in 30 years. Today, the violent crime rate is at a 50-year low. We're also securing our border. Border crossings are lower today than when the previous administration left office. I've kept my commitment to appoint the first Black woman to the Supreme Court of the United States of America. I also kept my commitment to have an administration that looks like America and be a president for all Americans. That's what I've done. I ran for president 4 years ago, because I believed and still do that the soul of America was at stake. The very nature of who we are was at stake. And that's still the case. America's an idea. An idea stronger than any army, bigger than any ocean, more powerful than any dictator or tyrant. It's the most powerful idea in the history of the world. That idea is that we hold these truths to be self-evident. We're all created equal, endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. We've never fully lived up to it, to this sacred idea, but we've never walked away from it either. And I do not believe the American people will walk away from it now. In just a few months, the American people will choose the course of America's future. I made my choice. I've made my views known. I would like to thank our great Vice President Kamala Harris. She's experienced, she's tough, she's capable. She's been an incredible partner to me and a leader for our country. Now the choice is up to you, the American people. When you make that choice, remember the words of Benjamin Franklin hanging on my wall here in the Oval Office, alongside the busts of Dr. King and Rosa Parks and Cesar Chavez. When Ben Franklin was asked, as he emerged from the convention going on, whether the founders have given America a monarchy or republic, Franklin's response was, a republic, if you can keep it. A republic, if you can keep it. Whether we keep our republic is now in your hands. My fellow Americans, it's been the privilege of my life to serve this nation for over 50 years. Nowhere else on earth could a kid with a stutter, from modest beginnings in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and Claymont, Delaware, one day sit behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office as President of the United States. But here I am. That's what's so special about America. We're a nation of promise and possibilities, of dreamers and doers, of ordinary Americans doing extraordinary things. I've given my heart and my soul to our nation, like so many others. I've been blessed a million times in return with the love and support of the American people. I hope you have some idea how grateful I am to all of you. The great thing about America is here, kings and dictators do not rule, the people do. History is in your hands. The power is in your hands. The idea of America lies in your hands. You just have to keep faith, keep the faith, and remember who we are. We're the United States of America, and there's simply nothing beyond our capacity when we do it together. So let's act together, preserve our democracy. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
Okay, you just listened to President Biden speaking there, President Biden that we've heard often, I think. He says, it's time to pass the torch. And I'll read you this direct quote. He said, I revere this office, but I love my country more. That's something I took a note of because I found it so interesting. He says, it's time to pass the torch. He says, forget about personal ambition.
Your money is gone.
I'm so sorry about that. He says, forget that, about personal ambition to, get another 4 years in office. He says again, and I'll quote this here again, quote, I revere this office, but I love my country more. Time to pass, the torch. Forget about personal ambition. He then goes on to say, in the next 6 months, he's going to make NATO better, protect democracy, beat Putin, bring peace to the Middle East, bring those wrongfully detained home. That list goes on forever. He says he made this claim, and I cannot confirm it. He said border crossings are less than last administration. I can't confirm it because he did recently have an executive order that kind of would close off the border after a certain number of people have crossed daily, I believe it was. He says it's time to preserve our democracy. He thanked Kamala Harris and said it was up to the voters as who they decided to be their president in 2024. This all coming after an historic last few weeks from the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. to Biden dropping out of the race. Again, him listing out what he's going to do in the next 6 months, while kind of boasting about things he's already done and saying border crossings were lower than the last administration. Information Brooklyn News is unable to confirm exactly. I don't have the numbers here in front of me comparing it to the 2016 Trump administration. That's, of course, who he was referring to when he said last administration. This is truly an election season, and an election cycle, really, that we are going to be watching so very closely and following on all of our social media pages. Again, those are at Jackson, MITCHEBN on X, at Jackson Mitchell. And actually, let me put them on the bottom of the screen because I do believe I had them. No, I don't have them. Okay. At Jackson Mitchell BN on Instagram, at Jackson MITCHEBN on X, Jackson Mitchell on Facebook, and of course, Brooklyn News here on YouTube for all of you tuning in. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in to Brooklyn News' live coverage. We are going to continue covering this Republic democracy, very closely, because it's so interesting as to what's going on in this busy news cycle and this constantly changing news cycle that we are seeing. Again, follow my social medias. I just listed them. And, of course, subscribe to us here on YouTube. Thanks so much for tuning in to Brooklyn News' live coverage of President Biden as he addressed the nation from the Oval Office.